an angry weekend in the EFL where it was a reduced docket, and therefore this NTT20 Monday pod is tackling 13 matches and a few other storylines across these leagues. The terrestrial EFL highlight show may not have bothered with a show this weekend, but we certainly will.
Did they not?
We certainly will. Because, George, there were plenty of highlights across League One and League Two over the weekend. Ridiculous red cards, hilarious goals, outfielders playing in nets, and loads of League Two depth incoming on the show. How was your weekend?
Yeah, it was good. I had a fun Saturday afternoon watching football, which was nice because no blackout when there's an international break. So all League One and League Two games were shown live on Sky. We made a decision that I was going to write a piece for the website, and therefore I wanted to watch a League Two game, and I basically chose Barrow Swindon off the recommendation or the request of I think Dean Gripton on the Not Top 20 squad, and I kind of went into it almost thinking I was doing it in order to watch what looked like was probably going to be one of the worst games of the weekend. I won't give away what happened next, but it's fair to say I had a pretty wild hour and a half of watching that game.
Yeah, League Two took its place in the spotlight pretty seriously, I think it's fair to say. We'll start in League One at the very top of it. We're still not talking specifics of league tables, but there is one team in and around the top of League One who benefited from many of their peers taking the weekend off. That's Wrexham. They played Shrewsbury. This one's a derby.
Top of the league.
Not everyone knows that, but this one's a derby.
It is a derby, yeah. And quite an interesting derby in that they'd played last season in the Cup, so it's not like they haven't played for a while. But if you go back, 6-7 years ago, Wrexham as a club in non-league really struggling. You know, anyone who's even seen the first episode of the Wrexham TV documentary will know kind of the low ebb, I guess, that the club had got into before the takeover. Compare that to Shrewsbury Town, who were basically incredibly unlucky not to get into the Championship, where they had a season where they were clearly the third best team in the league, but had two unbelievably strong sides ahead of them. So this game signified the passing of ships, really, and that's the way that it went.
Yeah, Shrews did the double over Wrexham in 2007-2008. That season, Wrexham got relegated, and Shrews have been in a higher division every year since then until now. As you say, that period is over, and that was represented pretty well in this football match, which Wrexham won by 3-0. Some nice attacking play from Wrexham in the first half. McLean cutting it back to Palmer to put them ahead. Barnett, the other wing-back, laying it off for Elliot Lee to make it 2-0, and then Marriott benefiting from a big mix-up at the back for Shrews in the second half for a 3-0 win. I'm going to talk about Arthur Okonkwo in a little bit on FOTMob Corner.
Exciting.
I'm excited about that. But one player that stood out for me outside of the obvious for Wrexham this season has been Ryan Barnett. He's the right wing-back. And he actually came through Shrewsbury's academy and never really played for them, and is now very much upwardly mobile, as is this Wrexham side. He's, funny to use the word upwardly mobile, he's got a really upright dribbling stance. Yeah. It's like he sort of doesn't really know how to sort of bend his knees.
But he doesn't know how to pass the ball to Elliot Lee, which he did for the first 2 goals.
Right. I think that, he's one of those guys who's like, as a dribbler, he's not aesthetically pleasing. But I think, to go back to sort of Moneyball stuff, I think he's really effective. And you can see that when he decides to get going, he's comfortable on both feet. He's very good at crossing and has created a lot of chances this season already with the quality of his crossing. But also showed intelligence for the first and the second goals here, actually to attack the space inside. He was basically being denied space down the outside because teams are keen for Wrexham not to be able to put crosses into the box to Ollie Palmer. So he just put his head down and darted into the middle of the pitch. It was his pass out to McLean that was cut back for Palmer, and it was his layoff to Lee that put them 2-0 up. So Ryan Barnett, the one standing out for me. And Wrexham are going well, aren't they? They are 3 wins to 0 in a row. They've had away games at Bolton and Peterborough already, 2 of the toughest fixtures on paper that they will have. Drew 1 and won 1 of those. Their next fixture is Monday Night Football, a week today, away at Birmingham City. George, what do you make of Wrexham?
That's box office. Yeah, I've been incredibly impressed by them. I think they look like they're going to be one of the best teams in League One, and it wouldn't surprise me at all if they get promoted out of the league this season. I'm not saying I think they will, but going into the campaign, I certainly thought Stockport looked like they would be stronger. I had some doubts over whether or not Wrexham have been able to succeed over the last couple of seasons because they have been big fish. They've been able to outspend their opposition. That doesn't take away from the job that Phil Parkinson and his team have done. But it always felt to me like there was going to be a ceiling for this group of players where suddenly they wouldn't be the best anymore. And I think that's fair. Like when you look at their team that started against Shrewsbury last time out, Ollie Palmer's a player that I basically don't think he's been a good League One striker really ever in his career prior to this. I don't think this was the plan when he was taken by Wrexham in the National League for him still to be there. But he's playing very well. Similar with Jack Marriott, who, at Fleetwood's showed glimpses of what he's capable of, but realistically, apart from it's been a long time since Jack Marriott scored all those goals for Peterborough that earned him the move to Derby, and he's had his injury issues since. But those two are keeping Paul Mullin out of the side now, where Mullin was fit to play on Saturday, having made 2 appearances off the bench. But because they're playing so well, he can't force a start. And I'm guessing because Palmer and Marriott scored the first and the third goal here, that's going to continue. I think the recruitment has been incredibly impressive. Dobson has been, I think, a really smart addition, someone who is definitely a very good League One player who has a skill set in terms of his ability to break down possession, and he's such a tough tackler, but also has the passing ability to kind of kickstart attacks. I think Rathbone is another one who is a very smart addition, someone who's a good technician in the middle of the park. You mentioned Barnett there, and for me that's kind of, he, as you say, came through at Shrewsbury. He had 2 seasons in the National League for Solihull where he really impressed and got his move to Wrexham. It's kind of, in my mind, if you're a Shrewsbury fan watching that performance from Barnett, 3 seasons after he was released by the club, you're thinking, like, how are we failing to see the promise of a guy here who has immediately left the club, gone to National League and shown he's too good for that level, and has made the step up to the EFL so easily, and is now looking impressive at League One. So big issues for Shrewsbury. You mentioned the first goal. I don't understand why McLean was given so much space basically throughout the game. He went close early on at 0-0 with a right-footed shot that hit the bar. He was in acres of space for the goal where he put in the ball for the first. I also don't understand how James McLean can put in a ball from the left touchline and it can roll along the floor, and Ollie Palmer can turn it home from pretty close range of the back post. Like, in terms of defensive shape, it feels lacking to me. So yeah, I definitely come away from this. I mean, even going into this game, I was impressed with Wrexham and pretty negative on Shrewsbury. I didn't see anything in this game to suggest anything different. And as you mentioned, I think Wrexham's fixture list, Wycombe, Bolton, Reading side have been so impressive that they beat 3-0. Peterborough and Shrewsbury. I mean, Shrewsbury is the first game there where you say, you expect them to win that. And yet they've only dropped 2 points in the away game at Bolton. I'm really excited to see them at Birmingham, because I don't think Birmingham have necessarily shown themselves to be a class above yet, despite getting points on the board. They've been marginal victories, and I think the Wrexham will really fancy their chances.
And you can see with the establishment of Barnett as the right wing back, of Cleworth, who we've talked about, as well as the right-sided centre back, that Phil Parkinson, albeit there are ways in which he sometimes feels like an odd fit for a Hollywood-esque team, and we have discussed that at length, and we've questioned whether he's the man to keep taking them up the leagues while respecting the promotions that he's achieved already. It is continuing to prove us wrong on that front, and I think in this specific sense is almost the perfect man for the situation, because he's not blinded by the names on paper that he has to work with. He's got an incredible squad. They bought Dan Scarr in the summer. He's been an unused sub all 5 games this season. He's fit to play. He's available. He's a promotion winner at this level, but he's not knocked Cleworth out the team because he's doing what Parkinson wants him to do. Same with Barnett, to be honest. I don't believe that he was, in anyone's eyes, Wrexham's starting right wing back for quite a while. They had Anthony Ford. They bought Luke Bolton. He has proved himself to be the better option for this team, and Parkinson is happy to stick with that, even if he's not the sexiest name that they have. So I do like that. Interesting from a tactical point of view, George. Quite unusual, I think, albeit possession is not the be-all and end-all, and direct play can be very, very effective. It is still an interesting thing in terms of football analysis that you have the team with the second lowest possession in the league this season. That's Wrexham. The team that's bottom for PPDA, which is a proxy for pressing or for how much you disrupt your opposition when they have the ball. They're bottom 5 for possession 1 in the final third. So again, you're seeing that in terms of at the very top of the pitch, not particularly fussed about trying to win the ball back or disrupt the opposition's build-up. And you just build a picture of this team that are happy for you to have the ball for as long as you want. They've got their shape, which they're very comfortable in. And they'll start taking you seriously once you get into their half. And they'll trust themselves to repel any attacks that you throw at them. They've got the best goalkeeper in the league, I reckon, in Okonkwo. And when they win it back, they can hurt you in different ways. They will go long if you're not set at the back. And if you have a centre-back that they know Ollie Palmer is going to dominate in the air, they'll get bodies close to him and play off him. But equally, if you are sitting deep, and they don't think that the long ball is a good option, they can knock it around as well with Dobson, with Lee, with the wing backs, get it wide and deliver quality into the box. So in a way, it's quite an abnormal style of play at the moment across the EFL and in English football, but it's working very well for them. They've got the second highest conversion rate in the league at the moment, so that pretty hot start finishing-wise. And what a home record they have at the moment. They've won their last 7 home league games, Wrexham. As for Shrews, tough day for their fans. They probably won't be listening to this pod, I imagine. But after the excitement of the 3-0 win the week before against Orient, the excitement of Leo Castledine's debut and the assist from Tommy Riley, I'm a bit uneasy about how much sort of hope and expectation is being placed on the shoulders of those two clearly very talented young Premier League loanees. O'Reilly wasn't chosen here as Hurst went a different direction and Castledine had their best chance of the game. So we move on to the other winners in League One over the weekend. That was Barnsley. George, they beat Bristol Rovers 2-1. Darryl Clark getting his first home win at Oakwell against his old side, Bristol Rovers. It was a really strong start for Barnsley. They had 5 shots in the first 10 minutes and went ahead with their big summer signing, Davis Keylorden.
With a great finish as well.
Great finish.
A very calm finish passed into the corner.
Little back heel from Luca Connell in the build-up.
Really nice assist from Connell.
Sexy stuff.
And it was good. And as you say, they were dominant up until they scored the goal, the opening goal that came, just 10 minutes in. That first 10 minutes was basically an onslaught from Barnsley, and they kind of maintained that superiority for the most part. And when the equaliser came from Ruel it was against the run of play. It came from a mix-up defensively with Donovan Pines and Slanina, the keeper, kind of getting in a muddle, and Satiriou jumped in between them and passed the ball into the empty net. And it kind of felt like a game where if Bristol Rovers were going to get back into it, they were going to have to capitalise upon an error because Barnsley were so by far and away the better team. But it nearly got even worse with one of the weirdest misses, one of the weirdest kind of passages of play where a cross came into the back post, and I don't know who it was.
O'Keefe, I think it was. O'Keefe. Number 7, yeah. Just
tried to do a defensive header unchallenged, not competing with anyone, and managed to head the ball straight towards Promise Omashere, who was 3 yards out. And I think he couldn't really believe what was happening either, because it must have been quite a weird optical moment for him to see a guy rising up, trying to head it one way, and then the ball just zipping itself to him. Yeah. And he made a complete and utter mess of... It wasn't an open goal because the keeper was in goal, but it was a point blank range effort that he wasn't able to divert into the back of the net, and that really would have been smash and grab had Bristol Rovers managed to ease their way in front. But it was a man who started the season incredibly well in Adam Phillips, who scored the winner with about 25 minutes left to go, a close range header that he diverted into the back of the net, not actually dissimilar in terms of how far out he was to Omashere. And it was deserved. I think Barnsley, after what was a difficult start, where on opening day they were beaten at home by Mansfield and were 2-0 down very early. They followed that up with a 2-1 win away at Lincoln, a 2-2 draw at home to Northampton, and then beating Crawley 3-0, and then Bristol Rovers 2-1 last time out. And it feels like for Darryl Clark, it was going to be incredibly important for him to, I think, get points on the board relatively early. And he's done that. And I think if everybody buys into what Clark is doing, I think their transfer business towards the end of the window was really impressive, with Keeler Dunn being a big part of that. Stephen Humphreys in as well. He's got an array of attacking options now. And when you consider what he was able to do with Cheltenham last season, and you compare what he had at his disposal at Cheltenham and what he's got at his disposal now for Barnsley, I'm sneakily confident that Barnsley are going to have a big say in the something around the top 6 this season.
Yeah, I'm pretty excited about them as well. I think they're playing well, and I just get the feeling that Darryl Clark is a good fit for the sort of tweak of approach that Barnsley took this summer. You talked about it on 5 Live on Saturday, bringing in Mark Roberts and Conor Howrahan, some older pros, the first time they'd bought anyone over 30 since James Norwood, and before that, many years really. And even Clark himself felt like a little tweak in terms of who they were looking to appoint as their manager. But I think it all looks quite good. I mean, Phillips, what a start to the season. His shot map is amazing, Adam Phillips, because I sort of always known him as a threat from range, but this season so far he's taken very few shots from range. I don't know if Clark's had a word with him, but last season he had 32 shots from outside the box. It was just under 50% of all of his shots, and he only scored 1 goal from outside the box. So it might have been that over the summer he took a look at his stats and thought, I tell you what, this is a bit of a waste of time, lads, isn't it? And now you look at his shot map on FotMob, and he's getting into really dangerous areas. He's basically like a really good poacher in a midfielder's body. And we asked on one of our shows recently, how do you get this Adam Phillips and Davis Keillor-Dunn into the same team? Well, the way that Clark's doing it so far is 3 at the back, as has been appropriate for them for the last few years. 2 wing backs with Cotter, who got a good assist, and O'Keefe on the other side. Craig sitting in front. Connell next to him, but kind of box to box and providing the quality forward passing. And then Keillor-Dunn and Phillips playing basically as sort of 2 number 10s off of Sam Cosgrove. And I like that a lot if they can get that to work. It means Keillor-Dunn is still picking up the same areas that he likes to operate in, just left side of the pitch in that number 10 role. Phillips the same on the other side, and Cosgrove the target man up top. You don't really need Cosgrove to score that many if you've got those two, and I think that suits him probably quite well.
17 of 21 aerial duels won by Cosgrove, wow, which is an insane amount of aerial duels for one game.
Yeah.
B, pretty insane
That's
amount
amazing.
that he's won. So it's just showing that they are, when you've got 2 players like Phillips and Keillor-Dunn in behind, it's hit Sam basically.
Well, yeah, and does that reflect a little poorly on Bristol Rovers' back line? Do they have the physical strength to deal with a Cosgrove and Ollie Palmer, players like that at this level? They've obviously got Wilson as the experienced one in the back 3, and then Taylor Moore, and on the left side Clinton Mola. I'm still kind of working Bristol Rovers out. Well, I suppose that's one way of framing it. What I mean is I don't really know what they are just yet, and I don't know how good they are. They've had home wins against Cambridge and Northampton, where they looked good and won them deservedly. Away defeats to Stockport, Barnsley, and a 0-0 at Rotherham, where they were battered. So, in a very simple terms in my head, that means they're like better than the poorest teams in the league, not nearly as good as the top teams in the league. And given their recruitment this summer was vast, abundant, and an average age of 22.6 for their incomings, I think I'm just happy to kind of look at this as like year 1 of a 2, 3, 4 year project. I don't know if their fans would agree with that.
It's all very well and good you saying that, but it's whether or not those at the club agree. Because I think it would be unfair to expect Matt Taylor to come in and make this very young new team a promotion challenger. It was part of when I was researching for Saturday's 5 Live hit. I think because you and I don't really look at league tables at this stage of the season, at this moment, you kind of, because you don't have a point of reference, I have an idea in my head as to how all teams have started, and sometimes that's wrong.
Yeah.
And with Bristol Rovers, it was wrong. I was like, oh, they've only lost 1 game, and that was away at Stockport, who have started the season incredibly well. They got a decent point away at Rotherham and have won their 2 home games to 0.
Yeah.
Like, fair enough. That's results-wise, that's a good start. This is the 3rd team, I would say, in Rotherham, Stockport and Barnsley. That's 3 very difficult away games, but they're 3 teams who will have expectations to challenge at the top end, and they're yet to find the back. Oh no, they scored 1 goal, which, as we say, was a bit of a gift, but they picked up 1 point. So I'd say at this juncture, it's very hard not to make a case that Bristol Rovers look better than the worst teams and quite a lot worse than the best teams.
There you go. That's what I said. I was right. Charlton drew 1-1 with Rotherham. We were expecting, I think, what did I call it? A disgraceful football match on the betting show. We weren't expecting many goals. We got 2, and they were both beautiful strikes from range.
Would have been 0-0 otherwise.
Yeah, that's how it works. Yeah. Liam Kelly, I think he'd scored 2 goals in his last 5 seasons. He got fed up of the lack of excitement and just mashed one in from the edge of the box. And that was Rotherham's first away league goal since February. 8 games they hadn't scored in.
Great strike, really good strike. Didn't understand when he celebrated. Like, I've been lucky enough, and any Oxford fans listening will know, like, we have had a blessed life in that stand. Like, I've seen crazy things happen in that stand,
Yeah.
whether it's Jefferson Louis scoring a penalty against a Premier League team, Ryan Ledson scoring last season, Sheen Smith scoring.
Gavin White.
Gavin White scoring.
Yeah.
It's an amazing stand to be in when your team scores at that end. What's Liam Kelly doing running off into the corner? It was bizarre. It was as if he thought the fans were over there. It was weird. He looked like a player that hadn't scored very much recently. But an amazing strike and a proper... I could see why Mannion in goal was pretty frustrated with the Charlton defensive unit, because they just stood off for so long that Kelly was able to kind of set himself and stride forward and take his pick. But then I'd say another great strike as well from Chuck Saneki, who'd gone close a couple of times, missed a couple of much easier chances. Gaston Hadme, we should say, missed one very relatively simple chance early on. She ballooned over the bar.
Wasn't so much the miss that I was offended by. It was just like the manner of it.
Yeah,
It just
awful.
looked really uncomfortable.
Yeah.
Poor technique, poor composure.
It feels to me like he needs a goal.
Yes.
So, yeah, I mean, it was a game, again, where there wasn't a great deal in either box. Both goals came from outside the box. Charlton, the best team in this game was Charlton at 1-0 down.
Right.
And it was a game where, I guess because of the way it went, both teams probably leave happy enough at the point.
They chucked the kitchen sink at it.
Yeah.
Anike with the equaliser. He has scored more goals as a substitute in the last 5 seasons than anyone across the top 4 English leagues. And yes, that is because he is physically incapable of starting football matches and playing 90 minutes, but it is quite a cool option to have as a manager, is to be able to chuck on chucks for the last half an hour when you're chasing a game. And he is as good a sub as you will find. A bit of manager news in League One since we last did a Monday pod. That is, Steve Bruce was appointed Blackpool manager. Somewhat out of the blue, in fact.
Bruce Poole.
Yeah?
I mean, what do I think of it?
Yeah.
I don't really like it.
Okay.
If I'm honest, it feels a little bit strange that a club, and I mean, I know they're different people. I know that there's a lot has changed, but it kind of feels like when they dip their toe in with Mick McCarthy in order to try and confirm or secure safety from the Championship, maybe they would have learnt then and there, especially having had Neil Critchley working either side, albeit not that well last time, that there's a certain maybe the game has moved on a little bit, and actually you want someone who's going to be doing absolutely everything at the club in order to, or just investing in young coaching talent is maybe the way to go about things. I don't think Bruce has done a particularly good job anywhere that he's been in the last decade or so. If you look at what happened at Aston Villa after he left and Dean Smith came in, there's a pretty sharp upward ascent. If you look at, even at West Brom, where he was there for a short amount of time, but not a very happy amount of time, and look what happens when Corberán comes in. Newcastle, obviously there was some money spent, but even before that, when Eddie Howe came in immediately, they improved. That sets off alarm bells. I know at Wednesday he did do well at the championship level, albeit for a short space of time. But I just think the football will be not particularly enjoyable. I would imagine. I just think for a club like Blackpool, who are so ambitious, they got it right with Critchley the first time, where they hired a rookie manager who took them to basically mid-table in the Championship. And I think just because it didn't work out the second time doesn't mean you should abandon that clear process and look to hire someone who, as I say, I just don't think is a particularly, in the if you take the coaching pool or managerial talent in the country, I think there are better appointments for Blackpool, especially given that seemingly the reason why he's been appointed there is because he worked with David Downs, who is he head of
Sporting Director David Downs. They worked together at Aston Villa. Then Steve Bruce got him a job at Sheffield Wednesday, and now he has got Steve Bruce a job at Blackpool. I mean, I think it's really nice when friends help each other out.
So do I.
I'm not sure the Blackpool fans are particularly keen on that.
If this was a Steve Bruce podcast where we're talking about like how do you feel about this for Steve, I'd be like, brilliant. Good
right? Yeah. Well, yeah. I mean, we'd be talking about his novels, wouldn't we? If this was a Steve Bruce podcast, not his football management career. Yeah, back managing in the third tier for the first time since 2001. And what a career he has had in management, I think it's fair to say.
For sure.
But since we've been doing the pod, which, as everyone knows, is the most relevant period of time in football history, he's not been a manager that has enthused us with his management of various EFL teams. I kind of expect him and Blackpool to do fine in the short term. I wouldn't be surprised if results are fairly good to start with, and there'll probably be some glee from those who are big Steve Bruce fans, and he's got a lot of admirers, particularly in the media. He's probably the most popular manager that I can remember in terms of his relationships with people within the media, and everyone that he comes across seem to absolutely love him. And I do think that counts for something, right? Like interpersonal skills, soft skills are a huge part of football management. So by no means want to use that as a negative against him. And I think it probably will help in these first few weeks, in these first few months, because if he's a really good bloke that people like, that's going to have a positive impact of sorts. It's on the football side, perhaps the tactical side and the player development side, where I would suspect that over time it'll become clear, I think, that there's not a huge amount of substance to the team. At least that's what we found at West Brom, at Aston Villa, where rarely were they like horrendously awful. Rarely were they getting battered or dominated in games, but it always felt like they were playing in like third gear.
Yeah.
And he didn't seem to know how to find fourth, fifth, etc. So see how we go with that one, but certainly an interesting appointment. And, you can't know at this stage if it would be good or bad, but as content creators, if it's interesting, that's fine by me.
I think it might be bad.
A time for this week's FOTMob Corner. I sit here with George next to me, just spending his whole time on the show on the FOTMob app on his iPad, because it gives you everything you need to be an EFL podcaster. I'm going to pick out a couple of players, one from each league, that having looked through the database that FOTMob have stats-wise and data-wise, just were standing out to me, and that I thought, okay, that's kind of interesting. For example, in the Championship, George, leading the league for big chances created. Not all chances, because not all chances are created equal. Big chances created. It's only Bristol City's Scott Twine, which you might not have thought of. And you might not have thought that because although he got that late winner on debut, he hasn't actually got an assist yet.
He's also barely played.
Yeah, 173 minutes.
Yeah.
Small sample, big chances created.
Yeah.
So we need to have a word with Sinclair Armstrong, Max Bird and George Earthy, because they're the ones that are missing these big chances.
Any of these, and I don't want to ask you questions you don't know the answer to. Set pieces or open play?
Love where your head's at.
Thank you.
I know exactly why you would say that, because he's an excellent set piece taker. But no, of the 8 chances that he's created, 6 of them have been from open play. The big chances, I think all of them from open play. And this is why it's exciting and interesting to me, George, because Twine's obviously known for his long-range goals. He's scored one from inside the box. He's had a couple of trademark free kicks that have been saved by goalkeepers. But it's this creative passing that's standing out right now. It's not always a part of his game that he's been known for. Obviously, small sample size, but I think to have 5 big chances created, to be the only player in the top 10 of the Championship for expected assists that hasn't yet got an assist, I think it bodes pretty well. And if you watch the key passes themselves, the chances being created, they are perfect, like number 10 bits and bobs. It's exactly what Bristol City were crying out for, and he is, albeit only in 173 minutes so far, looking like he's providing exactly that, receiving the ball between the lines, finding pockets of space, whether it's centrally in a number 10 spot or in probably his preferred spot, just in that little left half space. He gets on the half turn, his first touch has been very good, and he's playing these quick through balls, and you need a target for your through balls, and in Sinclair Armstrong, this is a great fit. Armstrong's most dangerous attribute is his explosive pace in behind, running off the shoulders of defenders. And 2 through balls for Armstrong against Derby. Good chances that Armstrong hit straight at the keeper both times. 1 against Coventry as well. Very similar threaded through ball. Twine dropped a beautiful ball over the top for Max Bird against Millwall, who ran in behind and had his shot saved as well. So it's not Twine's fault that he doesn't have 2, 3, even 4 assists. It's down to the finishing of his teammates. But I think it's boding really well for what was quite a protracted transfer saga. Quite a commitment from Bristol City to go back and get him, having had him on loan last season. But was a massive need for them in terms of the profile of the players in their squad, and looks to have made a really good start for them, Scott Twine. In League One, I want to look at a goalkeeper, Arthur Okonkwo, as mentioned in the Wrexham chat. He is top of the League One goals prevented list for goalkeepers. He's obviously played 5 games. Most of his peers have played 4. 23-year-old keeper, so still super young in goalkeeper years. Signed on a permanent...
What's the conversion?
I think the conversion's like 1.2 to 1.
Yeah. All right.
I don't know what I'm talking about. Signed on a permanent from Arsenal in the summer, and it looked incredible at the time, and it looks incredible 2 months later. He's faced 4.42 XGOT, that is XG on target faced. Now, what we have here per FOTMob is basically an extra layer to the basic XG number. So this XG on target looks at the placement of the shot as well. So not just where it was taken from, but where in the goal it was aimed. It's quite a helpful metric, particularly for goalkeepers and I guess for strikers, just to give an extra layer of context around the shots that goalkeepers are actually facing or the shots that strikers are taking. And he has only conceded 2 goals from 4.42 XG on target faced. So doing a great job, made some banging saves against Bolton in particular. And we shouldn't be too surprised because last season in League 2, by the same metric, 40 expected goals on target faced, and he only conceded 31, so around 9 goals prevented there. His save percentage was the best in League 2, comfortable claiming high balls as well. Has had 1 or 2 wobbles when sweeping up behind a high line for Wrexham, but that's fairly normal, I think, in League 1, League 2 for young keepers. And it's really important for Wrexham because last season they started the season with a shambolic situation in goal. Ben Foster was playing, faced 20 shots on target in his first 4 games, conceded 13 goals in that time. No such issues this season with Okonkwo and nets. 4 clean sheets for Wrexham in 5 games. And sometimes with clean sheets, it's mainly down to the defence and what they're doing to stop the opposition from getting good chances. Mm-hmm. Sometimes it's down to a goalkeeper playing out of his skin. I think in this instance, it's a little bit of both, but probably more about Okonkwo's excellence. A great start to the season for him. And in League 2, we'll talk about Andy Cook's exploits over the weekend in just a second. But Andy Cook's quite an interesting person to look at in order to have a discussion around finishing. And that's because, if you cast your mind back to 2022-23 season, Andy Cook won the Golden Boot in League 2. And then last season, playing for the same team, in broadly the same position, he did not win the Golden Boot. So what happened? Is Andy Cook declining as he gets further into his 30s? Well, 22-23 season, 28 goals, 24 of them were non-penalty goals. Last season, 17 goals, 15 non-penalty goals. So it's a drop-off of 9 goals for Cook. But if you dig deeper into the stats, they were very, very similar seasons statistically. 22-23, he had 120 shots, 17.85 expected goals, and he scored 28. Last season, 135 shots, 18.34 expected goals, but only 17 goals scored. So he did very similar things for a very similar team in the same league, but one year he scored 40% more goals than the next year. He scored 0.75 goals per 90 the season before, 0.44 last season, but his XG for both seasons was 0.48. Shots volume, shots on target volume, all pretty similar. It's just that expected goals on target figure, the quality of his finishing, that stands out as being much better in 22-23, 0.63 against 0.49. So I think it's just worth touching on that and reflecting that finishing does vary across seasons within individual players. You don't have one set in stone finishing ability, George. And
No,
Andy Cook proves that.
Yeah.
You might, but it's unlikely. Andy Cook proves that. And I think it's just worth, aside from Andy Cook, whoever you support, think about it. If your striker is having a really hot finishing season, you should absolutely celebrate it. And you don't need to go like, oh, he's overperforming his XG, I'm worried about this. Celebrate it, enjoy it, and it can last a whole year. But you are unlikely to be able to rely on it, and you should be aware that the goal return might drop off, even if the player himself is doing broadly similar things. I think that's an interesting discussion.
And it's always an important discussion to have around strikers where if we'd had a conversation last summer about Andy Cook, and we spoke about how he'd overachieved, outscored his expected goals by, what was it?
10.
It's 10.
Yeah.
It's one of two things. Either alarm bells, he's not going to be able to do that again, what happened, or it's brilliant, he's a good finisher. Still probably true.
Yeah.
So this season, 17 goal haul last season off 18 expected goals is like pretty good.
Yeah.
Getting a lot of good spaces. He's not being really wasteful. He's basically on track with his XG. So yeah, I think he's interesting. I'm a bit worried about his mobility, but he's never been the most mobile.
I love Andy
Can
Cook.
you give me a bit of mobility stats, please?
There's no mobility stats.
Okay.
Well, there's probably like pressing stuff, but we won't get into that just yet.
No.
I'm just interested to know what causes the variability in finishing. Like, if a player was playing for a different team, had to move house, all that sort of stuff, playing in a different tactical system, you can imagine that sort of messing with their juju a little bit. But with Andy Cook, you're literally playing for the same team, broadly similar role, and it is literally just the act of finishing where there's been a big change in the output. And I just find that really interesting. Is it, things like confidence and,
Massive, I'm sure.
rhythm.
Yeah.
But it's so hard to define, isn't it?
But then-
and it's so hard to work out what goes into that. Is he sleeping better?
I don't know.
Is he well rested? Is he carrying an injury?
Is everything okay at home?
Everything's fine at home. Thanks for asking.
Okay. But no, it's a good point.
Thank you.
It's the intangibles that will have such a big impact. But also the fact is, if he's missing more chances, then maybe that means he's not hitting corners as often. Maybe he's snatching at things because he knows he's missed a couple. Like, I think there's so much that will be wrapped up inside it that is impossible for us from sitting on the outside watching the clips back to kind of pinpoint.
It's a confidence game, isn't it, finishing?
Yes.
A lot like podcasting, I find. I'm very low on confidence at the moment.
That's why you keep missing your chances.
What I do know about Andy Cook is, to tie this up,
Good segue.
put a bow on it,
Yeah.
he's got the highest XG in League 2 this season. He's the only striker in League 2 with 3 non-penalty goals so far. Only wide forwards Berry of Chesterfield and Molyneux of Donny have scored more than him. And he's favourite for the Golden Boot. And I can understand why. He is cooking. Hold on. So that's the end of FOTMob Corner. Using FOTMob's stats and data on the FOTMob app to help power some fascinating, confident discussions. Do download the FOTMob app. It's got you covered, basically, for everything that you would need, both in terms of live scores and also helping with your analysis of these leagues as well. Download it using the link in the description of this podcast and enjoy it. League 2 took centre stage, did it not? And would you look at that? Bradford 2, Carlisle 1, Andy Cook at the double against the team where he started his career as a youngster but never got a first-team opportunity. It's his 18th goal against a former club of his.
Wow.
Well, 17th and 18th goal against a former club of his. And a big win for Bradford in an error-strewn football match.
Indeed. And it's interesting, you have Bradford, Carlisle, you've got Cook, who came through at Carlisle, scoring the 2 goals for Bradford. You've got Charlie Wyke, who was at Carlisle and then went to Bradford, scored some goals and then left, back at Carlisle now, who was playing up front for them, who missed a really good opportunity after 1 minute and didn't score it. And then 1 minute later, after 2 minutes, Andy Cook puts Bradford 1-0 up after a really bad bit of play from John Mellish.
Hellish from Mellish.
Hellish from Mellish.
That was
And you
dope.
said earlier that Cook was cooking while Neil was kneeling.
What?
Well, 'cause
Harrison Neal.
Harrison Neal scored the goal, didn't he, for Carlisle?
Was it a header while he was on his knees?
Well, no, he's on his knees praying for the madness to end.
I mean,
I've just
is
realised.
that his goal? Because
Yeah.
that's, I think, and we must be kind to goalkeepers where possible because it's very hard, their job. But I think
It is going in.
this will be the worst goalkeeper error of the season in League 2. That, like, when a keeper rushes out of goal and makes a misjudgment, and Lord knows we had a few of those this weekend as well, I can understand. Like, it's not natural for goalies to be running 40 yards off their line, but they're being asked to do that these days, right?
Love goalie.
And it's hard to judge the flight of the ball and spin and all that sort of stuff. But of all the basic goalkeeper skills, I think catching a ball that has just been lobbed straight down your throat has to be the one where there just is no excuse for that to somehow like pop out of your hands and drop into the goal.
It is weird. I can't work out why. I mean, football have given it an XGOT of 0.15. I would say it's more like 0.01 personally, because it is as simple a catch as you're going to make, and he must just take his eye off it. I wonder if possibly, I was going to say, like, some moisture on the ball or something, because it's so weird the way that it just kind of slips out of his hands and goes in. He's obviously devastated. I like it from Richie Smallwood. senior pro, goes out, grabs him out of the net, gives him a pat on the bum, and then runs off.
That's good.
Come on, let's just crack on.
I really liked that as well.
No point getting annoyed about it.
What a leader.
And there wasn't, because Andy Cook then scored at the other end with 20 minutes to go, turned around, pointed at Cook on the back of his shirt to the Bradford fans. And this was, it's a good win for them. It's an important win. We've spoken quite a lot of length on the betting show this season about Bradford's poor home form. That doesn't only go on weeks, but seasons. And I think had they drawn this game 1-1, had they been the better team as they were, but conceded in the way they conceded and drawn it 1-0, it would have been classic Bradford to an extent. But they were able to get over the line. And it's been a really strong start to the season for them. Not so for Carlisle, who are looking for a new manager. And I think bookies' favourite is Rob Elliott, who's odds on this morning when I looked.
I saw Ryan Lowe was in the betting.
Yeah, it's changed again now.
I think that'd be quite an intriguing job.
Surely he wouldn't want that job, would he?
I doubt he would be over the moon to drop down to League Two. But I think the context of the club, the strength of the squad, the backing that they appear to have, I do think it wouldn't be the worst thing in the world for him to get a job like that. Whether, maybe he'll get a similar thing in League One when a few sackings get made in League One, but maybe he won't. And actually,
it's such a good team.
That potential for upward mobility, I think, is absolutely ripe. What I did find interesting is that the comms from the Carlisle owner was that they will be appointing a sporting director and then a manager. So they're doing both searches at the same time. He wants to change the structure of the club to be less dependent on the manager, with Paul Simpson having had, understandably, quite a lot of power and authority over the last few years. It's a structure that many clubs have across the English football pyramid. I just can't remember many times where you've been hiring both at the same time. It makes me wonder, is part of the sporting director search that in their interview they have to say who they would hire as manager as well?
But surely, if they say they want the sporting director first, wouldn't it be a case where they hire the sporting director, appoint them, and then they do the manager search?
That's not the sense I got from his interview, though.
Bad, then, I think.
I mean, we shall see.
I would almost say...
In which case, we should be they probably won't have a manager for a couple of weeks then, right?
Well, they've got 3 at the moment.
Yeah.
So that's quite fun.
Triple interims.
Yeah.
They lost to their former academy player, Andy Cook, who... real star of the pod today, and one of my favourite strikers in the EFL.
Let him cook.
George questioning his mobility, I'm a bit upset about, because
that's all right.
That's not his game, mate.
Fine.
Your mobility's not the best.
No.
Mine's even worse.
My turning circle is so big. When I play football now, I turn around and the person I'm marking is like 10 yards away from me. I don't understand what's going on.
How did you get so far away?
Yeah,
What are you,
every
some Olympian?
time.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah, people are fast these days.
I know.
I've noticed that as well. I don't know, maybe it's, something in the water. League Two, before we get into any other games, because that game didn't have a red card, and it was basically in the minority on that front. 6 red cards in 10 League Two games last weekend. And that was the most in a League Two weekend for 3 years. I thought it might be more than that, to be honest.
And there were only 10 games.
There were only 10 games. It's not just the amount of red cards that is particularly notable, but the incidents themselves are just...
very few, like, second yellows. And there, the one that was a second yellow, I thought... The Chesterfield one.
The Chesterfield one's
unbelievably harsh.
Never a card.
As soon as I saw that, went onto FotMob, clicked on him, be like, surely that's got to be his 7th foul.
Yeah.
Like, it must be...
Yeah.
He must have...
Old Acre.
Old Acre.
Yeah.
Fouled 5 times. Only committed 2 fouls in the whole game.
Yeah, yeah.
Yellow.
He's 29, and he's kind of
old.
In between young and old. He should just be Acre.
Middle Acre.
Darren Acre.
Yeah.
Anyway, he's suspended for the next game.
At what age?
That means Chesterfield.
Interestingly,
they had the Dunkley one the game before as well.
Yeah.
They've had 2 second yellows for just non-infringements.
How old would you want Acre to be before he's called Old Acre?
I think.
And when would he graduate out of Young Acre?
The categorization of an old footballer has been moved forward a good few years in the last decade.
Yeah.
But I'm sticking to 31 and above to be an old footballer.
Okay.
Nice player. And the Reds that are probably most notable came in the game that you watched. Now, this was a draw, but as we've got a bit more time this weekend, let's talk a bit about Barrow 1, Swindon 1, because it'll be tough to beat as a just bizarre circus of a football match.
So I wrote a very short, silly match report on this, because the whole point of me watching this was that the idea was Swindon have had a very strange start to the season. They keep conceding worldies. From an attacking standpoint, they only scored 2 goals. Like, watch them and then let's
both
see.
from outside the box as well.
Yeah. Let's see what they are. And I couldn't really do that because the game didn't allow me to. They conceded another worldie with, I'm definitely giving him all the credit for it. I don't like anyone saying it was a cross. Gerard Gardner getting the ball on the left-hand side. Like, you know how they have expected threat?
Yes.
This goal came from an expected threat of like 0. Well, I was watching it live with my own eyes and nothing was happening, and suddenly he kicked it over the keeper into the back of the net. It was bizarre, but an amazing finish. Audacious was the word that I chose to describe it.
Yeah. Wonderful writer you are.
Thank you. And it felt from there like Barrow were probably gonna see it home pretty comfortably, and they almost did, even though after 40 minutes. Just a bonkers moment where Paul Farman's caught in possession about 40 yards from goal, and
Big Switch has a go.
Kilkenny has a shot, and Farman, like from 40 yards away, like parries it up with his hand, right, and the ball going towards. What would happen if it had gone in?
Goal
and yellow card.
Yellow.
It lands like 10 yards short of the goal and bounces just over the bar. So I'm calling it one of the greatest saves I've ever seen. But obviously he was so far out of the box that Farman was then sent off. So Rory Feely, a defender, centre back or right back, whose family played a lot of Gaelic football. He played a lot of Gaelic football growing up, so it kind of made sense. A sport where you had to catch and pick up the ball, would go in goal using his hands.
Is that
That's hurling.
one where you smack it with a stick?
That's hurling.
Uh,
Gaelic football, you
kick it.
You kick it and you throw it, and it's in your hands.
Hurling's hockey at head height, isn't it?
Yeah,
class. The goalies in hurling are absolutely unbelievable.
He's not one of those.
Sorry,
but he came on. So he went in goal. Feely went in goal with 5 minutes to go in the first half, with a lot of injury time as well. I was getting whatever I could on Swindon to win the game, being like, because it was in League Two, I don't think the market really worked out what was going on. I was watching it live, so I was like, this is good. I can, and that was true because about 20 minutes later, Swindon were a shorter price than they were at the time. But Swindon somehow managed to not have a shot from like the 40th minute through the 7 minutes or whatever of added time in the first half. A shot on goal, this is. And then for the first 15 minutes of the second half. So Rory Feely, a defender, stood in goal for Barrow for like half an hour and didn't touch the ball with his hands.
Yeah.
Which, in my mind, I was watching this is thinking, this is a poor attacking side in Swindon who are playing 11 against 10 with a defender in goal and are unable to test him. Like that is a huge red flag in my mind as to like both the system that they were playing, but also for Mark Kennedy not to be able to somehow like wrestle the initiative back and work out how to do it.
The intelligence of the players,
maybe, but they finally tested him from a free kick from 25 yards. So like the ball was literally put down for them to kick it at goal, and Feely pulled off what was like a pretty good save as the ball was flying towards the bottom left-hand corner from where it was hit. And you're like, okay, now this is the onslaught's going to start here. But big Harry Smith, probably getting quite frustrated that he wasn't really touching the ball anywhere near the goal, despite the fact that they had a defender. But you still think like, just use your head. Just decides before the corner's even taken, just to throw his massive elbow into Isaac Vassell's face. Like, you obviously don't know what goes on before this, but it was like a disgraceful off the ball elbow, and he's immediately sent off, and suddenly it's 10v10. Swindon still unable to really test Feely, who makes 2 or 3 kind of saves you would expect anyone to really make, that ball straight to him. And then in the 98th minute, Dan Butterworth gets on the ball from what must be like 38 yards.
Yeah, exactly.
And was it?
Yeah.
That's cool. And there's 30 seconds left on the clock, and he just thinks, enough of this. Like, let's just have a go. And he hits it really hard and really low, and it's the kind of save that any goalkeeper down to any level will probably make, but probably a save that you or I wouldn't make, and any non-goalkeeper probably wouldn't make. And Feely just dives over it, and it just squeezes in under him and goes in the back of the net.
The most upsetting part for me is when you play 11s or 6-a-side with your mates and you take it in turns to go in goal, and none of you are goalkeepers by trade. One of the features of people playing in goal is that they often use their feet more than their hands because they're not used to using their hands, and it always looks really budget.
Do you think you should just booted it?
if he'd used his feet, he just cleared the ball as if he was a defender. Like, he had got across easily. It wasn't a question of distance.
Yeah.
He could have actually just cleared the ball away, but he tried to make it look pro, like he was a keeper, and it squirmed. Squirmed under.
What was really annoying for me is that I'd sat through this.
All right, it's not about you, mate.
I know. I'd sat through this absolute whirlwind of a football match for. I mean, given the amount of time, it was like 2 hours. And then on our England pod WhatsApp group from the summer, our friend George stuck on it saying Lee with loads of heart emojis, and it was like the 97th minute, and the ball was going nowhere near either goals, and I turned it over to watch Lee Carsley not sing the national anthem and miss the goal, which was pretty annoying. So I didn't even see it. So after all that, I missed the moment. But as I said, in the piece, the fact that it took a 38-yard strike, it just hit really low and hard at the keeper that went in, I think only really hammers home just how bad and how inept it was for Swindon just to not be able to try and do that a bit more, or just make the keeper work. Like, they played against an outfielder in goal for the best part of an hour, and just didn't make him work.
I think we had a Sunday Scouting Report tweet from someone who made that point, which was that the goal almost annoyed them more, because it crystallised what they should have been doing. And I just love that idea that you've got 1 point rather than 0. You're actually like more annoyed than you would have been in an alternate universe.
Anyone sitting there just being like, just shoot. It's completely vindicated by what happened there.
Oh, yeah.
Like, they could have, I'm not normally an advocate of taking shots from range, but they could have just taken like 50 shots in an hour.
Cameron Brannigan would have scored 5.
I'd have absolutely loved it. just he was so, like, anyone who hasn't seen it, he's so far out from goal. Like, it's not like he was on the edge of the outside. He was like shooting from an absolutely absurd distance, to the extent that had a normal keeper been in goal, he'd saved it. He'd have been like, what on earth was he just doing there? Really crazy good game that I enjoyed and despaired about in equal measure. But just quickly, fair play to Barrow, we should say, because they played their part in defending incredibly well. I think for Stephen Clements, they'll be so annoyed and not having got the 3 points that they probably, deserved is the wrong word, but they came so close to getting. But they were good. From 11v11, their press was very good. They won the ball back in dangerous areas really well. I was genuinely impressed with them. Yeah,
so he has sort of backed himself and backed his strategy of not selecting a goalkeeper on the bench. Daniel on the squad wrote on Saturday, quoting Clements, saying he had done the maths, and on average, the backup goalkeeper in League 2 gets used 8 times across a whole season. So that's, 46 times 12. That's 552 games in the season. Subkeepers come on 8 times. That's 1.5% of matches. And Clements has decided that he gets more from having another outfielder that he can call on depending on the match situation. And he will think that, by the numbers, he gets more than 1.5% boost from not having a keeper on the bench. And look, they almost won the game anyway. So kind of an interesting one, I think, because there are other managers who do that as well. But almost every team has a keeper on the bench, but not all of them.
Well, now, I remember when there were 5, quite a lot of teams didn't.
Yeah.
But now it's 7 in League 1, League 2 and 9 in the Championship. I mean, I find it hard to believe he needs that 7th sub.
Well, funnily enough, Barrow can't actually name 7 subs because they don't have any academy grown players that they can name on the bench, and you have to have one. So
really?
They only had 6 subs on the bench.
Wow.
And none of them were a goalkeeper.
That is great knowledge.
Thank you very much. More red cards came in Port Vale against Newport.
Just going to say quickly, another weird thing about the game is that Swindon subbed on 2 players and subbed them off again, which you often don't see.
Yeah.
Paul Glatzel getting subbed off for a concussion sub, having carried on playing for a bit. Which isn't great.
Well, sometimes you don't realise straight away.
True.
And then someone at a set piece, you're chatting to the defender, they ask you who the Prime Minister is. You say John Major.
Sometimes, they give you a book and you start reading it, you're like, whoa, I feel sick. Have you ever had concussion?
I've never been concussed.
Nor have I.
I hate the idea of being concussed, even having never felt it.
Because you can't look at a screen.
That would be one of the many drawbacks of being concussed.
I once shut a boot door on my head, and I think I might have been concussed. I'm not sure.
You shut it on your own head?
Yeah, it was weird.
I can imagine someone else doing
It
it.
was just like a quick movement, and I wasn't out there properly. So and it came down on the top of my head.
It's like
I felt a bit sick for a bit, and then I forgot about it.
that sounds a bit like concussion.
It was actually this
And
morning.
you just said you forgot about it as well. That sounds a lot like concussion.
It was this morning. Am I here?
That's a great anecdote, George.
Thank you.
Perfect for international break weekend pod. It's sort of the equivalent of a keeper thinking they know where their posts are and sort of waving a shot past, and then it just goes in the corner.
Or cricketer leaving, yeah.
Yeah, leaving a straight one.
Yeah.
Newport 1, Port Vale 4, and 2 red cards in this crazy game at Rodney Parade. Much better from Port Vale. Well done to them. Playing a sort of 4-4-2 type thing with big Jaden Stockley as a target man, with Tolage as his partner, kind of pressing and poaching and disrupting. Had a fabulous game. And then Chislett off the left, who's obviously a lovely technical attacking midfielder. And Benicio Baker-Boeti on loan from Brighton looks really fun and set up Stockley's first goal with a brilliant left-footed cross off the right wing, curled onto Stockley's head and scored. Then you've got George Byers, who's now fit and playing at the base of midfield with Garrity box to box. It looks really nice on paper. And of course, Vale, the gauntlet was laid down for them to actually make it work on the pitch because it's been a poor start to the season. They did so here. And, that attacking unit, all getting goal contributions. The assist from Baker-Boeti to set up Stockley, Tolage set up Stockley and Chislett, then scored himself as well. Really good attacking performance from them. Good stat from the NTT20.com weekend notes put together by Substack Sam. Since Jaden Stockley scored his first EFL goal in 2011, no player has scored for more different clubs. His first for Port Vale was his 11th different club he has scored for in the EFL. I think Newport kind of had this coming. It was one of those where I kind of wish we actually listened to ourselves sometimes, because I remembered that the last 2 times we spoke about Newport on the Monday pod, they'd won, and both times we went, yeah, probably not at their best here, actually, but getting the win, which is good, but didn't actually play very well. And then the chickens came home to roost here, and they rather lost their heads, didn't they? With Kieran Brennan.
What did you think of Brennan's red card?
Well,
because I don't like it. Basically, he did 2 things.
It's naive.
He gave him a push on the head, and then a little kick out with a leg. But what I don't like is when sometimes a leg is being held, and then they get punished for trying to wrestle their leg free.
So I don't think trying to get your leg loose from someone who is clinging onto it is a kick.
No, nor do I.
I think there has to be a gap between leg and target that then gets closed in a kick.
I agree.
And that isn't that. But it doesn't look, it's the classic, Garrity's a seasoned old pro, Brennan's a bit inexperienced, and he's just done him there. He's done him. Naive.
Yeah, I didn't. I mean, they could have had another red card because it was Stockley's. Was it Stockley's second? No, it was Tolage's goal, the 4-1 goal.
This is amazing.
The Newport. Who was it on the line?
This is my favourite red card of the season. My favorite, even better than Farman.
I was talking about the red card that wasn't. But yes, this red card is good. Jameson.
But it's the same thing we're talking about.
Oh.
Kyle Jameson gets a yellow card for making a diving save on the line.
Was it Jameson who did that as well?
But he didn't stop Stockley's shot.
Yeah.
It went in. I think it was Tolage maybe.
Yeah.
It went in the corner.
Yeah.
But it was an amazing full-length diving stop from the centre back.
It wasn't a stop.
Didn't stop it. So he gets booked. I'd actually like to know what the law book infringement is there. Is it unsportsmanlike conduct or deliberate handball? Because it's not a red because the goal was scored.
It must be unsportsmanlike conduct, I would assume.
So he gets booked for that.
Although you can still get booked for offences after an advantage. So it could also be.
I think it's just deliberate handball.
Deliberate handball, but you didn't get a free kick.
Yeah,
the goal. Yeah.
So that's hilarious. The ref books him for being an idiot, and then books him again for being an even bigger idiot, where they're waiting for a throw in to be taken. A loose ball comes onto the pitch, a second ball, and Kyle Jameson whacks it off the pitch into the Vale fans who are right next to the touchline, and they go mental. I didn't really like the Port Vale players appealing for a card. That's a bit come on, he's just kicked the ball off the pitch. He's got it slightly wrong.
Maybe at 4-1,
Yeah.
11v10, you can just kind of let it go a bit. But, they're sticking up for their boys.
Really and he gets a second yellow for... I'm not even sure what that infringement is. But
that's got to be unsportsmanlike conduct, surely.
Everyone knows that pinging the ball into the crowd is a yellow card.
Maybe that could be our really niche quiz game as we take bookings and we ask the question, what's the infringement for?
One underrated part of this that a lot of people might have missed is that the fans are going kind of nuts. And most of them are just gesturing angrily. And one Vale fan just walks up to the front of the stand, opens a gate, and starts walking onto the pitch to confront Jameson. Doesn't get very far, but it's just everyone's losing their minds, and this guy just looks completely calm. He's just going to walk onto the pitch and try and get
have a go.
I think he got stopped pretty quickly by a security. So yeah, another pretty lively encounter in League One over the weekend. 4-1 win for Port Vale. Performance of the weekend. Notts County 2, Accrington 0. Without Dan Crowley, without Jody Jones, without Alassane Jatta. Some may have been concerned. David McGoldrick thought, I'll just do it all myself then.
Is Didsey going to be the League 2 top goal scorer but only score goals from outside the box? Because it's what he's doing at the moment.
It's incredible.
Yeah.
It's absolutely incredible.
And also, in this case, he was ridiculous. So Didsey scored 2 goals in the game. The first was similar to his 2 goals against Swindon, where he just got on the ball in a bit of space, 25 yards out from goal, and he just planted it into the top corner. It feels like he's in the groove of someone who's confident they can do that. His second was had a slice of luck to it, where it was deflected into the back of the net, but again, from outside the box. If you look at his kind of game by numbers, he had 8 shots in the game, 5 were on target. You mentioned there the players that were out, and watching this game back, it was very obvious this was the David McGoldrick show. This was, I think, the Swindon game was the McGoldrick show in that he scored 2 great goals that won the game. This was it in terms of everything was him. Everything went through him. He was the creative force. He was the main goal threat. And when he moved to League 2 last summer, I think we thought we were going to see a lot of games like this where he was just going to be head and shoulders above the rest. That didn't really happen. But this was an occasion that shows that he's still definitely got it. And I do wonder if maybe this starts the season. Maybe in Stuart Maynard, he's found a manager who is willing to build a team around getting the best out of him, because he looked like a championship player playing in a League 2 game.
Absolutely incredible. The highlights, the 4-minute highlights, if you told me that was David McGoldrick's testimonial,
yeah, I know,
I would have believed you, because every single highlight is him just picking the ball up on the edge of the box, little shimmy, little shake, and then a shot. 5 of them very well saved, we should say, by Kelly in the Accrington goal. George Abbott got a lot of love. He's on loan from Tottenham Hotspur, made his first start here for Notts as one of the midfield pivots, deep midfield pivots, and played very well. And Notts are going pretty well, George. 3 wins in a row. After starting the season with 2 draws. They needed defensive improvement quite spectacularly, and they appear to have got it so far, Notts County. They've conceded 4 in their 5 games, 2 set-piece goals. Always can be a bit of a kryptonite for really technical teams at this level, because you're rarely really technical and really tall. 1 strike from range from Kilkenny against Swindon, that was a pretty good finish, and then 1 goal against Fleetwood, the second, where they were kind of split open and their high line was exploited. But overall, I think Notts County can be, and Stuart Maynard in particular, can be pretty pleased with their start to the season.
Yeah, I totally agree. It feels, after the uncertainty last season, after Luke Williams left and their kind of season really petering out, and I think quite a lot of the Notts County fans wondering if they made a mistake with the appointment. What they needed this season was to start solid, to maintain the kind of possession-heavy style that we associate with them, and with individual players maintaining their form. Jones is still brilliant when he's played. As we mentioned, McGoldrick's really stepped up. Jatta started well. It feels like they're on a really solid foundation to challenge. And they're one of the many teams in League 2 that, you go into the season with a few question marks over them, a few positives. They could be very good, but there's a chance they might drop off, who've started the season better than anticipated they would.
As for Aki, they're one of 3 teams in League 2 with no wins so far this season. They pose in this game and kind of throughout so far like a kind of inconsistent threat, like a disparate goal threat, where they have ways of hurting you, but it doesn't always feel particularly consistent or repeatable. I was trying to find out a bit more about them because we haven't spoken about Aki much on the pod so far. Per FOTMob, they've won the ball back in the final third, the third most in the league. They've also got the most yellow cards and made among the most fouls. So clearly still quite aggressive out of possession. In attack, they've had some good moments, and Sean Worley is still a quality player despite being one of the oldest outfield players in the EFL. Tyler Walton, who they signed from Southport, has made a bright start to life in the EFL and looked quite dangerous. And then the strike partnership of Mooney and Knowles, who we love because they just lifted them straight out of Boston. Boston United, that is, not the US city. They've both made an okay start, I think. They were both missing for this game. Quite sweet this, in a funny way, George. They live together, and they both picked up the same sickness bug.
No way.
They missed the game. I smell a sitcom.
They need to get some vitamin D and zinc.
Vitamin D and zinc.
I actually need to get some.
I thought supplements were a con.
Yeah, I think vitamin D is very much not a con.
Okay. Vitamin D, not a con.
But I don't think you have to go out and get the kind of...
Zinc, zinc you're on the fence with.
I think...
Zinc.
Yeah, I think for some people there is probably a placebo effect to multivits that I think those people should just crack on doing what they're doing.
Multivits.
Let's just hope for anyone who's been with us last winter will know that I'm just very nervous about having a lot of illnesses.
Big illness guy. Yeah.
Oh, no.
I've got a tub of magnesium tablets, but I don't know what for.
Do you take them?
Occasionally.
Just sit one in.
Yeah. If I see the pot, I'm like, oh, I should have one of those.
Yeah.
Don't know why. Maybe recovery. I'll often mutter to myself, good for recovery. But I don't know if that's true or not.
I
haven't got much to recover from.
I'm much better at doing my vitamin Ds if they're gummies.
Really?
Yeah, vitamin D.
You'll
gummies.
have a gummy, won't you?
Yeah, love a gummy.
Yeah, nice. Rolling back the years, back to being a child. Yeah, George loves sweets. Absolutely loves sweets.
Yeah.
Often buys a pack of Haribo after a work lunch, under the guise of us both having them. But we know the game now. You're going to have 95% of them.
Yeah, but I'll also leave them open. So when I come back to the office 2 days later and forget about them and I see them there, I'm like, yes, that's a 9 a.m. treat.
Yes. Accrington are bad defensively, to change the subject. Not good at defending their box consistently. They can feel a bit sad that McGoldrick scored those 2 goals from range, but there were plenty of other opportunities as well. Their goalkeeper Kelly has continued what was quite poor shot-stopping form with MK Dons last season. They've conceded 5 goals from outside the box.
I made one very good save from Didsey.
One astounding double save,
Yeah.
which was very impressive. But a good win for Notts. Let's move on from David McGoldrick to Billy Sharp. What is this? Sheffield United 2018-19?
Yes.
Because Billy Sharp scored the winner for Doncaster Rovers when they beat Gillingham 1-0.
I feel like we're going to see Billy Sharp hooking the ball into the back of the net a lot this season.
That was nice, wasn't it?
Seen it twice. Yes. Yeah, no, again, Donny, this is a difficult game for them at home to the side that were top of the table, the top of the embryonic table going into the into the game.
We've done hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of podcasts.
Yeah.
We must have said millions and millions and millions of words.
You've never said embryonic before.
I think it's rare that there's ever a word said that's never been said on Not the Top 20 pod before, but I would guess that embryonic has just made its debut.
I reckon I've said it before about the league table, specifically.
I reckon we've probably said fetal before, but probably the first embryonic.
The fetal league table? Was that after
No, more like...
Was that after 8 games?
This team, they've been hammered so much, they're just lying in the fetal position at the bottom of the table.
Okay.
Perhaps.
That's a weirder way of...
No, I think the fetal position is the most widely used use of fetal, I'd say.
Yeah, no, I agree, but more in terms of like embryonic fetal baby. Full form.
Yep, go on.
They could be the league table stages. Yep. Anyway, I think we're still in the embryonic phase as it stands right now.
Yeah.
And
a lot of baby chat today. Interesting.
I wonder why. They were... Donny were pretty good value for it. The fact they went ahead against Gillingham side that had been pretty good defensively after half an hour, and Gillingham were pretty unable to create much in terms of a goal scoring threat was impressive. Sharp, as we say, he looks like he's someone who's going to profit from being in a side that create pretty decent chances. This is the 3rd goal he scored this season. All 3 kind of close range finishes, and that is all you really need him to do. As I say, it doesn't really matter if your legs have gone, if that is your role to do what he's doing there. So yeah, a really impressive win for them. Gibson very good on the left side. I think in Gibson and Molyneux, you've got two players either side of the striker who are going to be both a big creative force and goal threat too. So I think Donny have really, we had them first now on to 24s, and the good thing is I think if we were to do them again now, they'd probably still be first.
Yes. Chesterfield beat Grimsby 2-1, their first home win of the season. They've probably played better, Chesterfield, and failed to win this season already. And Grimsby will certainly, to use quite a classic phrase, Grimsby will play worse and win this season. So the picture I'm building is that Grimsby played well. But
this was a classic where Chesterfield fans, after saying to Grimsby fans, "You'll be fine, guys. Don't worry about it."
Yeah. Patting them on the head. Good side, actually. Yeah. Decent unit. Decent
you'll
outfit.
Be fine.
Decent these. I actually saw some Grimsby fans saying Chesterfield are rubbish, and we should.
In that case, Chesterfield fans would be like, "You're going down."
Yeah, exactly. What does that say about you?
Yeah.
Grimsby got one back with 40 minutes to go, with Chesterfield having been 2-0 up at half-time through Berry and Markanday. But Chesterfield were able to see it out with relative comfort. I think Grimsby's first half performance was quite impressive, and they found themselves 2-0 down. I'm getting a bit tired of feeling disappointed by Grimsby Town goalkeepers, I'm afraid. And it's not just Jordan Wright, who's currently playing in goal and who let a Berry free kick get through him. I'm sure there was a little deflections. I'm sure there were bodies in the way, but it just didn't look great. But last season, it was the same with either Cartwright or Eastwood. I can only imagine how Grimsby fans feel, because I think relatively consistently over the last 12 months, there have been games where they've played perfectly well and lost or drawn because they haven't had good shot stoppers in goal, and that's a bit of an issue. But a win for Grimsby, they're second of the season. I've got big piece coming out on Thursday on NTT20.com for our paid subscribers. League 2 tactics piece. Big old breakdown about a few teams that I find interesting. There's quite a large section on Chesterfield. So that'll be saved for the paid subscribers of NTT20.com for Thursday. Maybe I'll chat about it in more depth next week. But to tease you in, the hook is Paul Cook loves a 4-2-3-1, and so do I.
You love a hook.
Mm-hmm. The hookman. MK Dons 1, Walsall 0. MK Dons 1, Walsall 0, George.
Yeah, kind of similar in terms of the way the game went as the game we just discussed between Donny and Gillingham, where this was a tough game for MK, albeit MK's form not as good as Donny's, having lost to Salford 1-0 last time out, really needing a decent result. Walsall, who'd been so impressive to start the season. Callum Hendry scored the only goal in the game, a well-taken finish at the back post after a really nice flowing move from MK.
One of the team goals of the season, I'd say.
Very nice move indeed.
Quite good timing as well after the virality of Roy Keane's comments about MK Dons at the back end of last week.
Come on.
Who do you think you are? Okay. Get it forward.
Whoa, you bottled it there, didn't you?
Yeah, I did. I felt bad about doing the accent the first time, and I've pulled out for the second bit.
It's an interesting week as well for England and Ireland football relations, so want to be careful.
Yeah, yes. No, I just wanted to shout out MK Dons keeper Tom McGill, because he was indirectly referenced by Keane, who said, I wanted to go and talk to the MK Dons keeper and say, like, what are you doing playing 15 passes? You're losing. What are you doing? And thankfully, he wasn't named specifically, but I imagine that was probably quite a tough end to the week for Tom McGill.
Yeah.
Young goalkeeper, trying to follow instructions and getting called out on one of the biggest media outlets that exists for one of the biggest names in the space. But boy, did he maintain his confidence, because he played the first pass in the build-up to that beautiful goal. And that was a risky pass. It's the exact sort of pass that he is being asked to play. And it helped to break down this Walsall team that have been basically the league's best out of possession. That's what you have to do to break down a team like Walsall. MK Dons played brilliantly for that goal, but McGill also made some key saves as well. There were a couple of chances for Walsall, one in particular for Earing, close-range shot that McGill managed to keep out of the net. So, McGill, having had probably quite a tough end to the week, performing very, very well. So well done him.
In this game, there were 14 shots in total, and there were 5 of them were big chances, which is quite fun. I think it shows, it's a sign of a well-coached team, so they are not, they're always looking to fashion the ball into decent goal-scoring areas rather than letting fly whenever suits. It was a big trait of Dave Challoner's Stockport last season was that their shot counts weren't particularly high, but the XG per shot was always very high. So
yeah, the Keane comments are interesting, right? So
back there again, are we?
Yeah, I just think it's worth discussing. Like the MK put out a tweet, a TikTok video of their goal being scored with Keane's comments playing over the top, which was a good, humorous response to the situation. And broadly supportive of that. I think it's all good fun and games, and they had every right to do that. I mean, his point that he was making wasn't really specific to the goal that MK scored, because he was talking about when teams are losing, these possession-based teams stick with short passing from the back when they really need to score and time is running out. So that was his big source of frustration. He wasn't just saying tippy-tappy football is rubbish. It was specific to the losing context. And so I found that interesting, where he was talking about MK Salford on Monday night. We both watched that game. Everyone was underwhelmed by how MK Dons played. They did almost equalise, albeit it was a shot from range, wasn't it, really, that was brilliantly saved. And his point is, what's the point of knocking it around your goalkeeper and your centre-backs when you're chasing the game? And I kind of still disagree with him in a way, where I think this isn't to say that what MK Dons, how they play it, is the best way to do it. But I think in their own context, I don't really see the value in starting to pump it. They don't have the players in attack who are used to receiving long passes, winning flick-ons, getting on the end of crosses, rising over centre-backs and heading home. If you're going to do that as a plan B, you want targets in the middle, right? And they don't have those players because that's not the way that they play. Yeah. Equally, I think for a coach, there's probably an issue with buy-in. If you are coaching on the training ground to play a specific possession-based, short build-up style of play, but you say, caveat all this, lads, with, if we're losing, panic massively and just pump it. I think you're probably going to lose a bit of buy-in there from your players, aren't you? Well, which one is it, boss? I thought this was the way to do it. But even outside of that, I think there's tactical reasons to sometimes take your time a bit. I think that if you've got the ball with your goalkeeper, it's unlikely that all of your attackers, or even many attackers, are going to be in the opposition box waiting for that kick, right? Defensive lines can push up, they can make it hard for that to happen. So for me, taking a bit more time to build the ball into a position, into the opposition half, even if it takes 10 seconds, where you get to the position where all of your outfielders are then in the opposition half, you can offer a threat in different ways by having people out wide to receive the ball if the defence is narrow and then put the cross in at that point. You've got your attacking midfielders in the little half spaces to get the ball to feet, and hopefully you've got a few people in the middle in the box if the ball does need to be pumped in at that point. Also, if you lose it, you have the players close to the play to try and get on the seconds if the ball is headed his way. I think there are quite legitimate tactical reasons for not just slinging it into the box. And the point being that no one does that anyway nowadays.
But surely
does that?
There's a point here, which is that the reason why MK Dons play the way that they play is because Mike Williamson thinks that's their best way to create chances to win football matches. So the fact that it's late in the game and you're behind shouldn't alter that. Unless, I guess, you've had 90 minutes of play where you haven't really been able to do it at all, in which case you should switch it up. But I don't really understand the idea, unless you're getting to like 30 seconds to go, Butterworth shooting from 38 yards stance. Like, you should do whatever you have recruited to do, whatever you think your players are best able to do. There's obviously a time and a place where if you get a corner, for example, and there's 30 seconds left on the clock, maybe that's not the best time to play a short corner, possibly, just in case you do lose it. But yeah, I'm with you. Yeah,
I think it's interesting because I can't think of any teams that are getting a lot out of the other approach of chasing games. I think if that was statistically a really good way of scoring equalisers when you're behind, all teams would do it all the time. And literally
I'd say it's
barely any teams
desperate way to chase a game.
Another like tactical point which I thought of is actually a lot of long passes makes it, well, on the one hand, a lot of defences would say that's the easiest possible thing for us to defend against.
Yeah.
We will back ourselves to win those headers and clear our lines.
Yeah.
Also, massively increases the time-wasting opportunities for them.
Yeah.
If the pass isn't perfect and long passes are difficult to complete, ball goes out of play for a throw, for a goal kick. We'll take 45 seconds on that, no big deal. Aerial duels, what does that raise the chances of? Head injuries.
Yeah, go down.
Kick it out, stop the play.
Yeah.
I think there's loads of reasons not to get it forward. So go on, Tom.
Get it back.
Keep playing your passes, mate. Love that. Crew beat Morecambe 1-0.
This is the closest thing ever to a 1-0, which is a game that happened.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, it was pretty poor. I mean, the penalty decision itself was kind of, after 43 minutes, was almost the most notable event to happen in the first half, or the first notable event to happen in the first half. And it's a weird one where Dimitri kind of runs inside, he falls over as he's taking the shot. I think the camera angle is bad, so I'm not sure we can see if there is a tug on the shirt or not.
Agree.
I assume it's been given for a tug on the shirt, which we can't see. So it's a bit of a strange one. Hemmings dispatches it with relative ease. Morecambe had quite a few chances in the second half, failed to score either of them, to score any of them. So Crew have won back-to-back games. They picked up 6 points in 2 games against teams in Bromley and Morecambe, who were amongst the pre-season favourites to struggle, albeit I don't think Bromley will be that. I don't think they've been particularly convincing in either game, I wouldn't say, but I think given the way that last season ended and the way that this season started, points on the board just as a means to kind of get some confidence up is really important. There's no, unlike this time last year, I don't think any Crew fans would try and spin it as to that they were brilliant on Saturday and were fully deserving of all 3 points. But getting a home win and getting, as I say, back-to-back wins is the kind of thing that could lead to a turnaround in performances, because they will need it, because the games are going to get harder, albeit they go to, their run of games now is actually remarkably easy in terms of Accrington, Harrogate and Newport, their next 3. Again, 3 teams who are with the favourites for relegation this season. So, it could be a good opportunity for them to continue to pick up points.
Quirk of the season so far in the EFL, I'm afraid, goes to Morecambe, who have lost all 5 games 1-0.
Yeah.
They've only conceded 5 goals, which is fewer than the team who are first in League 2.
Yeah.
But they haven't scored one yet. Very wasteful here. Quite like the way that Derek Adams has approached it, to be honest. Just saying there's a good team in there, and at some point we'll come good, we'll start to click, we'll start to pick up points. And I kind of agree, actually. I'm not panic stations. I'm not panic stations when it comes to Morecambe. Cheltenham won, Harrogate 0. However, I probably am slightly panic stations. And there might be panic stations about both teams here. Cheltenham have beaten Harrogate. Harrogate conceding from a set-piece goal was not a big surprise. They've done that quite a lot this season already. Great header. Tom Bradbury scoring it probably was a bit of a... That was harder to predict, given that it was his first appearance of the season. Am I bitter because I picked Sam Subs to score? Yes, I am.
Subsy.
But it's one of those, George, where I feel like both teams come out quite badly here, in that Harrogate, the away side, had quite a lot of the play, which doesn't reflect that well on Cheltenham, because Harrogate themselves have been exceptionally poor in a lot of games this season. Yeah,
I listened to Simon Weaver's interview after the game as well, and he basically was like, we've completely dominated that first half, like totally, and it's hard to disagree, both in terms of the balance of play and the chances created. I totally agree with you in that, I'm worried about Harrogate, but I think, we know that with them, it's likely to be a struggle, and they are seemingly very adept at picking up results. But with Cheltenham, after that opening day win over Newport, their performances have been really, really alarming, especially from an attacking standpoint. And this is another game where they have created very, very little. They've had 11 shots, most of which are from range, a total expected goals of 0.27. This is fresh off a game at Walsall where they created very little until they scored a relatively easy chance late on. A game against AFC Wimbledon where they had 4 shots in the entire game, all that came from range. I think there were some eyebrows raised when we had them in the bottom 2 in our 1-24s, a relegated team who'd done all right towards the back end with Michael Flynn coming in to manage them. I'm not seeing anything yet, even though they won this game, to suggest that they are in anything but big, big trouble. I think if their performance levels stay the same as they are right now, they are not going to win many games, and Saturday's result will be an anomaly rather than a regularity. They've got a run now. Salford, Chesterfield, Fleetwood. difficult in my mind to see them picking up too many points from those three.
Colchester 1, Bromley 1. Michael Cheeky Cheek hitting the post, then scoring a pen. Poor bit of defending from Ellis Ayandolo to give away that penalty scored by Cheek. What a cross from Jack Payne for Edwards to score at the back stick with his right foot as well. I think he's getting better, Payne.
Yeah.
I think having probably realised that League One isn't his battleground, I think he can now just embrace being a sort of Wes Hoolahan League Two player. He's absolutely brilliant. 15 chances created already this season. Some of them, well, many of them set pieces, of course. Only Lee Evans of Blackpool has more in the EFL per FOTMob. Cole, you did get back into it, but they failed to win their last three against Harrogate, Accrington and Bromley, which isn't going to get them to where they want to be. Great pod, great fun. Thanks very much.
Thank you.
See you on Thursday for a betting show. I will obviously see you both of the days in between that as well.
Yeah.
But we will be back on Thursday for a betting show. It went pretty well last week. Don't know if you noticed, including a 14-1 under 2.5 goals quad winner. So well done, George.
Both Naps winners.
Both Naps as well.
Why well done me?
Well, I thought I'd give you credit.
Well done you.
You lift me up when
Nice.
times are hard.
Thank you.
Thanks for listening. Chat to you again on Thursday. Go well.